Welcome to the Moved to Meditate podcast. I'm your host, deHilster. If you're a yoga practitioner or teacher who knows that there's more to yoga than poses, but you're wondering where to find that, come join our quiet little party. Here you'll find resources to help you deepen your practice, as well as insightful conversations with yoga, movement, and meditation teachers from a range of traditions. On this podcast, we spotlight the more contemplative aspects of movement practice. So we talk about all things gentle yoga, meditation, yin, restorative, yoga therapy, mindfulness, and more. Listen in and connect to a community of like-minded practitioners. Hello, everyone. Thank you for being here today. Welcome back to the podcast. Whether you're new to this show or you're a returning listener, I really appreciate you. Want you to know that. And I also want to thank those of you who sent some kind messages recently about what I've shared on the podcast about the health challenges going on in my family. The good news is that my mom is home from the hospital and getting stronger, and now Mike's dad has had a successful procedure and should be going home from the hospital soon too. So I shared some of what was going on recently, in part just to be transparent about how it's affected my ability to show up in all the ways I usually do in my work. Like, I've been on social media less, and I haven't been able to do as many interviews as I'd like to for the podcast. But also I share this because these are situations that are real, and they're real life examples of how I'm practicing with the themes that we study here, like kindness and compassion, and how those themes are really, really relevant for me and for all of us, I would imagine. And speaking of my family, in today's episode, you're going to meet Mike deHilster. Not only is he my husband, he is a key part of the Moved to Meditate team. We have been together for a really long time, and he was there when I started my yoga practice and then my meditation practice and started my career in these fields. And he has also had his own relationship with movement and mindfulness and his own ways of practicing. So we thought it would be really fun to share a little more of our story with you and how these practices have really woven into our life experiences together and how that influences what we are doing here with Move to Meditate just in general. So in this episode, we will mention the Moved to Meditate class library, which, just in case you don't know what it is, so you know what we're talking about, it is my collection of online classes. There are guided meditations and mindful movement sessions and therapeutic yoga classes and gentle yin yoga classes. And so if you like the podcast and all the kinds of things we talk about here, and you're looking for practical, accessible tools that fit into your life, kind of like what Mike and I talk about in this episode together, you could go check this out at movedtomeditate.com if you're interested. But we had so much fun recording this episode together this last Sunday morning that it kind of went long. So it was longer than we expected to talk. So I have divided it into 2 episodes, and you will hear the first part today, which includes how we met in music school, how we first encountered movement and mindfulness practices in yoga, and more details. And I hope you'll enjoy getting to know us a bit. So here we go. Okay, welcome back, everybody. So today we have hopefully kind of a fun, different episode for you, where my husband Mike is here with me, and we just thought we would kind of interview each other and share a little bit more about our background and what we're doing with Move to Meditate, and a little bit about like our practices and how practice can evolve and look different for different people. So that's what we're doing. Do you want to say hey?
Hello, everybody.
That is Mike, the secret other team member of Move to Meditate.
And now I'm on a podcast.
And now he's on the podcast. So he definitely helps me with things for Move to Meditate. He edits all of the videos that go in the class library. and he is my consultant and main person that I have to bounce ideas off of. He listens to um, all of my brainstorms and complaints and all of the good stuff. He's supported my career doing this for the longest time, and yeah, so I really appreciate that. But being a team member of Move to Meditate is not his actual day job. It doesn't pay at all. At
Well,
least for him.
I'm working on that.
We're working on that. He is in an unpaid position. I was like, maybe one day I'll be able to pay you. And he was like, well, why wouldn't you just pay yourself more?
Exactly. I have a job.
So, how about do you want to tell us about your job and what you actually do in the world aside from Move to Meditate?
Sure, sure. So, yeah, hi everybody. I'm really happy to be here hanging out with Addie and talking on the Move to Meditate podcast. I work for Foundant Technologies as a client success consultant. And what Foundant Technologies does is makes software for foundations and nonprofits. Um, and certainly had a an odd path through my career to get there, but yeah, it's great work. And when I'm not doing that, I am editing videos, and I am helping Addie with Move to Meditate. So
And not to interrupt you, but the third member of our family, Mustache, was just standing in the doorway of my office, kind of squeaking. He doesn't really meow fully. Maybe he will when he grows up, but he's kind of standing there squeaking. He wants to be on the podcast too.
of course he's the podcat,
Yeah, that
so he
we
has
try
to.
to call him
We're
that.
Yeah, we'll get him on here eventually.
With his lots of wisdom to share about the topics.
Right, and how to sit in the window and freak out at birds.
Yeah, exactly. He's an expert on that. So we both work from home though. So you work for Foundant at home, and we're here in our apartment in Vancouver, Washington, and in the two rooms right next to each other, which is where we are recording right now. It's really funny because we're seeing each other on a screen, but we're in the next room from each other. um, but so the company you work for makes software for foundations like the philanthropic world and for nonprofits. And we both kind of started our professional careers in the nonprofit world. Do you want to tell us a little bit more about what you've done in the nonprofit world, and I can chime in a little bit with my background on that too, but you have more of it than I do at this point because the paths diverged at some point.
Yeah, true. Yeah, so after you and I moved out to California, after school, we both headed for the nonprofit sector. And I started working at the Music Center in LA County um, in their K through 12 arts education programs. And I did that for 3 years. After that, I started doing some freelance work, and you actually taught me how to grant write um, way back then, and I kind of incorporated that with some other things and a really cool part-time job at a private foundation where I learned a lot about granting to nonprofits. So I went from working at a nonprofit to an organization that granted to nonprofits, actually in this case universities, but same concept. And then I thought, hey, I kind of like this work. This is the good I want to do in the world. And so I started much more actively looking for like a stronger position, and ended up at a community foundation, which is different from a private foundation in that they are kind of more geographically focused, and they also still fundraise. So they're actively trying to get members of the community to engage in philanthropy and create pools of money that can do good. So, and I did that for 7 years.
At the Pasadena Community Foundation.
Pasadena Community Foundation, right? And so, you know, the pandemic happened, and
What?
yeah, that old thing. And without going too deeply into that part of it, but it kind of, I think, made us realize, well, hey, we you're already fully remote. You could do your work anywhere. And I realized, hey, if I did that too, then we could have some freedom. And I just really lucked out because the community foundation I worked for used the products from Founded Technologies. And I had a good relationship with some people over there and was able to get in. And it's been almost a year now. And I'm really, really excited about the impact I can have on foundations and therefore on the entire nonprofit sector, um, to keep doing that good in the world that I wanted to
Hmm.
see. So yeah, it's a far cry from where you and I started in school. I mean, you can talk
Yeah.
about your nonprofit sector work too, really
Yeah, I want to
quickly,
get to
but
all of that.
yeah, we got to jump back to
Yeah, it's really
that.
interesting because, like, you were saying that I could do my work from anywhere and I was fully remote. Well, that only happened because of the pandemic, too. Because while you were
True.
working at the Pasadena Community Foundation, I was running Spiral Path Yoga Center in La Crescenta in the San Gabriel Valley and, the LA area. And so we were pretty locked down because we had a lease on this space, and we were not mobile before that. And, had some really great experiences, of course, like running that studio and fostering this community of practitioners and leading our teacher trainings. And even that whole journey with the studio still kind of does have connections with the nonprofit background because because my original partner in the yoga studio was Peggy Burt, who stayed along as one of the main teachers there for years, always until we had to close down in the pandemic. She was my last boss in nonprofit work. The last job I had doing any kind of grant writing and nonprofit work was at the California State Summer School for the Arts Foundation, longest name ever, CSAF. She was their executive director, and she hired me part time to do grant writing and help her with fundraising and just kind of organizing things there administratively. And I was so grateful because I didn't know her when I took that job, but I was trying to find something part time because I was teaching yoga and I needed like something else to do for income. And I didn't think I was a little worried someone would think I was just flaky, like, and she didn't take it that way. She was like, she understood that I wanted a job that was like less responsibility, that allowed me to focus on the yoga thing. And she was doing yoga. She was a practitioner herself. And I don't know at what point, but she was taking a yoga teacher training. And so we like really hit it off, and it was interesting because we had this shared experience working together in a nonprofit, but then it became like owning a yoga studio together. So that was really interesting how those things kind of, one thing leads to another sometimes. And yeah, so yeah.
Yeah, I mean, she was super supportive. She helped me practice interview for the Pasadena Community Foundation interview. I remember that, you know, um, and and I think I did some work, some freelance work for CSAF. Did I say that acronym right?
Yeah.
Where you're working as well. So, or I did some work for her, and yeah, it is interesting, how you meet people and you think they're going to support you in one way, and then they end up supporting you in a whole new journey. So, Um, yeah.
Yeah, I think
Shout
she's
out
going
to
to be
Peggy.
the next interview on here, by the way. We're going to talk about labyrinth meditation pretty soon. So,
Awesome. That's perfect.
yeah. So, yeah, I had worked for the Los Angeles Chamber Orchestra, for the Fowler Museum at UCLA, doing different grant writing and fundraising positions. And that was kind of how I took my experience as a music major. And once I decided I didn't want to be a performer, I had some kind of like academic experience and writing experience and research experience, and I learned how to grant write. So I took those skills and I kind of stayed in the arts, but went into that nonprofit world for a while, and that was kind of how we kept ourselves afloat when we first moved to Los Angeles. And it diverged for me. I eventually like somehow created this career teaching yoga and meditation, and then you went deeper into like the foundation world. So um that sort of leads us to where we are now, but maybe we should back up to talk a little bit about our experience in music school, because that's where we met.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Oh my gosh, it was so much fun. What a time.
It's
Um,
funny because it's like neither one of us is a musician performer for a living, but I still I don't think I would trade my music school experience for anything else. I mean, maybe ask me on a different day and I would say, dang, if I'd known I could have majored in physical therapy or something, but I don't know. I think that I learned a lot of life skills and a lot of things that I use to this day in music school. How
oh
about
yeah.
you?
Oh yeah. Yeah. There are things that are ingrained in me that I mean, even just punctuality and the organization that it takes to be prepared to show up for a gig, sit down, play, and nail it every time. It takes, rigor and planning and diligence. And, fortunately that's never really left me. Sometimes you can go overboard with with that, and I still do get a little bit intense here and there. But yeah, I'm with you. I wouldn't trade it. It was, I was in school for way too long. I got most of a DMA, a doctorate, most of it. Um, and then obviously to not be doing that, it feels a little bit weird. But I learned so many things that were just applicable to life and certainly nonprofit work. Not even just specifically arts nonprofit work, but I mean that's where
Mhm.
you and I both started off, was in arts nonprofits. But it's just very Swiss Army knife set of skills that can be applied professionally in our world, I think. And it was just a heck of a lot of fun.
It was a lot of fun. It's its own world, like kind of the way that Hogwarts is its own world.
Right.
But
Right.
we've also compared it to like a monastery, because it's
Yeah,
like
we have.
it's
Yeah.
kind of an ascetic lifestyle in some ways, and it's I think really where I learned to appreciate having a practice. And at that time, the
There were
practice
rooms for the practice.
there
There were
were
practice
practice rooms. There were
rooms.
little cells,
They're
like
little
in a
cells.
monastery.
Exactly. Yeah. You go in there
it
and listen to saxophones play long tones.
Oh my god, we all wanted to shoot that guy. There was this guy, side note everyone, who he would get a tuner and then he would play like one note for like an hour, and all you would hear was like when he would take a break to take a breath, and it would just be like this, and he was like trying to adjust it to perfect intonation, but it would just do that one note for like an hour, and he always would pick a practice room really close to the like lounge where we had to sit and take a break, so everyone was going kind of crazy listening to this guy. But I'll tell you what, he got first chair in wind ensemble the next
He got
semester.
really good, didn't he? Yeah. Life lesson there.
Yeah, sometimes you have to annoy some people while you're getting better.
Oh my
But
gosh.
I think, there was such a discipline of practice, and we all were spending hours and hours a day as young people sequestered in our little practice rooms doing our long tones and playing our scales and perfecting these really minute details musically, and we were really committed to it. And that was very much the ethos. There was like this sense of
Hmm.
commitment to a craft, and I think that has influenced me. It's shifted to the craft of yoga and meditation and mindful movement and things like that for me. But I think there's that appreciation for just committing to something and really getting interested in the nuances and taking the time to really sit with it and watch it evolve. So I think that's part of what resonated for me with, or when I look back at music school, I see that through line to what I do now.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree. I mean, you know, we're we're obviously heading towards talking about our practices and the roots of being okay with even the concept of practice
Hmm.
for us, I think, came from music school, and even before that, in high school and
I
middle
mean, middle
school when we
school.
were learning, you know,
Yeah.
piano lessons for me at the age of 5, just even though I
Hmm.
was, I remember my mom saying, Mike, you got to go practice. And I didn't wanna at times. But, so there's that introduction to kind of deep practice concepts.
Hmm. And like you just learn that if you're consistent with something over a long period of time, that it will grow and you will get better at it. If improvement is a thing, if it's a performing art, then it definitely is a thing. I mean, meditation may be a little different, but that it will grow though, and it will deepen and it will shift and it will evolve if you keep coming back to it over time.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that actually is a nice segue into um, the other side of music school, which is how stressful it could have been.
Yeah.
It was at times.
Well, keeping
And
in mind that, like, it's college,
yeah,
right? So we had our
right,
whole academic load outside of music school, but then we were 18 to 22-year-olds in undergrad, right? When
right.
we met, I was 18 and you were 22 because you were a senior and I was a freshman.
True, true. That's all true.
And so we were at the University of Alabama, which is in Tuscaloosa. And we should say what our instruments were because people are probably wondering at this point if
That's
they don't know.
that's true. Yeah. I was a French hornist.
French horn performance major.
Yep.
I was a flute performance major. I started out
Yeah.
as a music education major for like one semester, and then I switched to music performance because I wanted to be more hardcore.
More hardcore.
No, I
I
wanted to focus on the craft and less about the being a music education major was a training to become a teacher, like a band director, like in the public school
right.
system. And then I realized I didn't want to go that route. And if we wanted to be like college music professors, that's
Hmm.
performance major. Or if you wanted
Right.
to play in an orchestra for a living, that's performance major.
Hmm. Yeah, and what's interesting about that for you, I think, is you ended up being a teacher. You didn't do
Yeah.
the education path formally in music school, but you've always had that through line through everything as well.
Yeah, that's true. I started teaching flute lessons as a undergrad and taught courses in graduate school and things like that. So I've always really enjoyed teaching.
Yeah, absolutely. And so we met in 1996.
Now
In
everyone
the
does the math how old we
uh,
were
oh,
or how we are. That's okay.
yeah, that's true. They've got all the numbers they need now to figure that out. But yeah, we met, side note, in the basement of the music building where I was
Which
practicing because the acoustics were fantastic.
all the especially Mike, but the horn players like to play down there instead of in the little practice rooms because they like the acoustics better.
So much better.
So he hung
And
out in the basement all day.
I did, I did. It was like what is it, the Phantom of the Opera, except that I was in the basement instead of the rafters. I don't know where the Phantom of the Opera really hung out, but um, when he was not terrorizing people. um, anyway, that was not me, and I wasn't wearing a mask. So, but we met then, and um, I'm trying to think when you started doing yoga.
That was my junior year.
Okay, so that was a
Yeah.
couple years down the road. Okay,
Well, you were starting to talk a little bit about like the environment of music school. We talked about like
right.
the pluses of what we gained from it, but it was also quite a pressure cooker. Do you want to talk a
Yeah,
little bit about that?
sure. Yeah, I mean, I think when you're learning an instrument and you start to take it seriously, maybe it's late in high school even, you know, you have to compete against your section mates and, the other people playing your same instrument to get the top chairs. So there's a very big culture of competition, of course, in band, in orchestras, etc. So, and that certainly gets even more so in college when people are really, really good and
Hmm.
getting better on a weekly basis because of how much you are playing and how much you're rehearsing. I remember days where the horn was on my face for like almost 8 hours, like so athletic and working so hard to achieve. And the goals were great. I mean, I did it because music is amazing and I wanted to bring something good in the world. But yeah, it got really, really stressful when there was a couple of years where I had some down years and I didn't achieve what I wanted to. And that could put me into a spiral. So,
Hmm.
and there wasn't really, I mean, everybody, it was very kind of macho um, kind of ethos of, you just keep working and you do this and that. I mean, there's not a lot out of just talking with your friends and commiserating. If your studio teacher, your instrument teacher was, good, they would kind of help you through the rough spots, of course. Um, but beyond that, there wasn't much in the way of coping tools
Hmm.
with that level of stress.
Do you remember how
And
there was a sign like near where the lockers, where my flute locker was, like kind of across from the flute studio? Um,
oh, I
that
do.
in the
I know
oboe
what you're
studio,
gonna
like there
say.
were several, but there was this sign someone had printed out that was there for a long time, and it said, "If you're not practicing, someone else is."
Oh, yes.
Ugh,
And
which meant they're gonna beat you. They're gonna get your job. They're gonna,
yeah,
you know,
exactly.
you
Yeah.
leave you behind.
Yeah. There's not many orchestra jobs, there's not many professorship jobs. And so at the time that kind of rings true. I look back on that though and I think, "Oh man, what a head trip that was." You
Hmm.
know, because while we were all really kicking a lot of butt and having a great time so much of the time, we also, you know, yeah, I mean that stress level was really really high at
And
times,
we
like
had
super
something
high.
called sophomore qualifying. I
Right.
don't know if they do it anymore. I think they might have changed this, but at our
They
school, at the end of your sophomore year, you had this huge performance test, and you had to play in front of a bunch of faculty members. I think it was for us, it was like all of the wind faculty members. So it's probably like 10 faculty members.
Mhm.
And
Yeah, that's what I remember.
you had to have like three prepared pieces, and you had to like drill all your scales. So, like all the different versions of the major and minor scales, someone would sit there at the panel and just call it out to you, like C sharp harmonic minor, and you had to play it, you know, or, all of the, like, they just went boom, 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 scale, 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 and you had to just stand there and like nail it. And, then you had to like play your pieces and you were being graded. And if you didn't pass, you were like on probation to stay a music major and you had one more chance to pass this qualifying or you had to change your major and potentially lose your scholarship. Like for some of us, we were both on scholarships
We
because we
were,
had
yeah.
been through that audition and gotten scholarships to like help pay for school to be there. So that's like enormous pressure. And to just like, you have this one performance in front of a panel of 10 judges and you've been preparing for a year for it and you have to nail it in that moment or you could like lose your place completely.
Yeah, it was really, really intense. And they did it for a reason because the performance world is just like that. Imagine being a major player in like the Boston Symphony Orchestra where you
Hmm.
show up for weekly concerts and you have to get it right every time. So there was a
Yeah.
reason for it. It does not mean it wasn't very, very stressful. And so
Hmm.
um,
Yeah, they weren't
there were
doing it to be mean, but it wasn't
no,
gentle.
it wasn't. And I remember, and while we were prepping for this, we were talking about these books that I had forgotten about that were kind of floating around the school,
Hmm.
like the Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance, the Inner Game of Tennis.
Hmm.
That and your friends. That's kind of all you had,
Yeah.
you know. So, but
People didn't talk
yeah,
that much about stage fright or like the performance stress and stuff. It was really just kind of embraced as this is part of it, and either you can cut it or you can't.
yeah, yeah,
But so you asked when I started yoga, it was my junior year, and it was shortly after kind of another episode experience like this of like intensity and stress because this famous flute player, Jean Pierre Rampal, probably like the most important flutist of the 20th century from France, was coming to our school because he was our teacher's teacher and he was going to do a master class for us, which means that three, there were supposed to be three of us from the flute studio chosen to perform for him in the concert hall in front of an audience and to be critiqued. So you would be playing for 5 minutes and he would stop you and say, you should do this or try this or do it differently or whatever. And so we were competing for months to get the opportunity to perform for him. And I did get one of those three. I think it turned out to be four. She picked four of us, but it was originally going to be three. I did get one of those spots and I did have to stand up. It was kind of a mixed blessing because it's like an opportunity I wanted to have, but it was terrifying to go up on the stage in the big concert hall with this famous French flutist sitting on a stool next to me, looking over my shoulder while I'm playing this unaccompanied Bach piece. And he's like stopping me and giving me critiques in French. And then my teacher is translating, and then there's an audience watching, and I'm trying to like not die. Um,
oh my
so
gosh, yeah.
I
I
got through
remember I
that,
was in the audience. Yeah, you did.
and
Um,
then I
Not
was
without effort.
not without effort. And after that experience is when I was kind of like hitting a wall with stress, and I was walking around the music school one day, like going to class, and I was just kind of like tired, and I stumbled into the door of the room I was supposed to be going in, and I was like, ugh, I'm so stressed. And this guy who was in class with me was standing behind me, and he was a character too. Like we called him Smokey Joe because he was like a jazz studies or composition major or something. He was
Yeah,
groovy.
I think it's composition. Yeah, those
Something,
those
yeah.
guys were different.
They were really different.
And
They
yeah,
all smoked, and he not only smoked, but he would roll his own cigarettes, like sitting out on the stoop. And he was kind of, and no, like for a wind player, flute or horn, none of us smoked. Like that would be
no,
like shooting yourself in the foot. So
big time,
to make it
big
way
time.
harder. So anyway, that was a thing, and he's the one. He was standing behind me, and he goes, "Dude, you should try yoga." And I don't know why, but I was like, I should.
Oh my
That
gosh,
was
yeah.
it.
I mean, it
That
was
was my that was
that
my
was
cue.
your cue to start that. And it's so funny because like here's this guy rolling his own cigarettes and smoking and totally groovy. Like it's almost so cliche. dude, you
Yeah.
should try yoga. But that's pretty much what he said. And you
Yeah.
were like, yep, let's
I
go.
think I should. So I went back to the music library where I had access to a computer and got on my Amazon.com account, which was this new thing that we had.
Wow.
And I ordered a VHS tape of AM PM yoga with Rodney Yee and Patricia Walden. It was one of the first things I probably ever ordered online. And then when we got them, I got the videos. I went over to your apartment
Hmm.
and popped them in the VCR and did yoga on the floor of your apartment for the very first time.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember, and certainly wasn't the last. I mean, you really jumped into that. Like it really felt to me, maybe you have a different perception of it, but my perception was that it was almost like a light bulb going off
Totally.
because you did it once and then you did it again and then you did it again and again. Um, you know, it immediately was helpful to you.
Immediately. The first one I did was the PM yoga because it was in the PM in the afternoon when we got the videos. So, so it was with Patricia Walden, and it was like it felt good. It was like the stretches felt familiar to me. I had done gymnastics as a kid, and so like I was pretty flexible, but not that that matters, not that that's a prerequisite, as everyone knows, hopefully, listening to this, but it felt kind of familiar to me because of that background. And it started to like immediately just doing that kind of stretching helped release tension from holding my flute for years and the stress of that. And I think I resonated with like the breathing because being a wind musician, that the breath is a huge, huge part of what you're doing all day consciously. But what got me was the shavasana. The last part of that tape, she guides a shavasana, and that was what hooked me. And I was like, oh my god, I didn't know it was possible to feel this relaxed. So that was, yeah, that was a big experience for me, just
Yeah.
to feel like I connected with my body and it felt better, and just that it was possible to relax to that level.
Yeah, it was quite something. I mean, so your junior year, we got married at the end of your senior year. I'm just trying to think through now because we went through a sequence of events of being in school and trying to graduate and getting married and planning the wedding
Hmm.
that I look
Yeah,
back
we just
on
thought
and
we'd do that
think,
all at the same time, like apply for
sure,
grad school, plan to
like,
move to a different state, plan our wedding, oh, and graduate, and do our
yeah,
senior recitals and stuff like that. Yeah.
no problem. The hubris of youth playing in there, like, sure, we got this. Um, you know, but and I think that I would say that for me at least, the stress of school just carried because we ended up graduating, going to University of Oklahoma in Norman, Oklahoma. The two of us both got um, some fellowships and not to go too deeply into it, but I found my time at Oklahoma extremely stressful, um, and it was one of the reasons that I decided not to be a performer.
So you started to mention, like our journey going to grad school in Oklahoma, and we were really trying to figure out what we wanted to do, and then we ended up in Long Beach, California, because your brother was living there, and that's when we started kind of taking our careers in other directions into the nonprofit world, and we were like starting to work in downtown Los Angeles, which is very
Hmm.
different than places where we had been before and where we had grown up, but
For
kind of
sure.
exciting.
Hmm.
And where in all of this did you actually start to do some yoga and or meditation?
Yeah, yeah, it's pretty interesting. I started, well, we were in Long Beach. I started meditating. I remember it was not too long after you started because you were very excited about it and you wanted to share and I'm like, All right, meditation. Okay, whatever. You were like, here's this book um, that you were reading, a Stephen Batchelor book. Can't remember the
Buddhism
name of it.
Without Beliefs.
There it is. And
Yeah,
like,
because I
okay,
think that was one of the things is you were pretty skeptical about like what is this and is this like religious? Like what does this come from? And
yeah, for sure, for sure. You kind of have the stereotype picture of what all of this is in your brain because it just has been suffused all your life, right?
mhm,
So, but I did read that book, and it did get me to actually sit down. I remember I had a desk in the corner of our first apartment in Long Beach, and I like spun the chair around and I sat and I did one of the exercises. I have no idea what it was. It might have been 3 minutes. It might have been 1 minute. I don't know. But I sat, and and I think also too around that time you had started going to Long Beach meditation,
mhm.
which we could walk to at the time. Well, not at first, actually.
Not in the
We
first
did, yeah,
center
not
they
the
had. They
first one. That was a
moved.
little bit further. We could take a bus, but yeah, we
It
drove
wasn't
because
far.
there was actual parking for this place. So, yeah, I remember
Amazing.
going to that and meeting the teacher and sitting in there and being kind of still freaked out, but you know, but I did it, and it's still with me. Like
Mhm.
it's still a through line in my life. Um, that those just initial teachings. And I say this about meditation to you a lot, which is it's not something that you can unsee.
Mhm.
When you sit and you engage in whatever type of meditation, in this case it was insight meditation, and when you start to see these things, maybe through the mechanism of noting them, you don't unsee this. And I think it's really, really profound. So my formalized practice has gone in and out and in and out, but it it's always been with me off the cushion.
Mhm.
Yeah.
It's definitely influenced how you think about things, and it can kind of like change your worldview, really. So that was part one of my conversation with Mike, and a little squeak from Mustache. Don't know if you heard that. So we're going to leave it here for now and bring you part two in the next few weeks. And I'm actually not sure yet if it'll be next week or the week after that. But in that conversation, you'll hear more about connecting with our first meditation teacher, Mike being my guinea pig for practice teaching when I was in yoga teacher training. He apparently had some feelings about that, which is really hilarious. How he eventually developed his own 20-minute personal yoga practice that he does on his own once he decided he actually liked to do yoga. And how our practices both eventually expanded beyond stress relief to really a way of looking at the bigger questions. So I'm really excited to share part two with you soon. Thanks again for listening today and letting us share a bit of our story with you. That feels really special. So I hope it helps you reflect on your own journey and why you want to practice and gives you some permission to make your practice your own. Be well until next time. So that's today's episode. If you enjoyed this conversation, please share it with a friend and or leave us a review on Apple Podcasts and help others find us that way. To learn more about my work, the Moved to Meditate class library, live online classes, teacher trainings, and private lessons, go to movedtomeditate.yoga. Thanks so much for listening.